Hi, everybody, and welcome to Outside In. And this Outside In is outside, not inside, even though we're inside. But we're back live and in real person, in the flesh. It's great. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be back doing this. My name is Stephen Rose. I'm a 14-year veteran here at Microsoft, and I'm a geek and a nerd. I know DMAs and IRQ addresses, and knowing 9 is the pass-through. I know all of the bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back, including Zuckuss, and I know the full Roy Batty dialogue from the end of Blade Runner. But nothing makes me happier than getting a chance to speak with our special guest today. He's an author and a father and a TV star and film star and a huge advocate for mental health, which is why I am so excited. So today, please welcome my guest, Wil Wheaton. Wil, thanks for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks. So I loved your book.
Thank you.
And there's a quote, and it says, and I want to get this right, "The ugliness I put out in the world through my views at that time, which included homophobia, privilege, and a level of myopia." So this book, you take a book that you had already written, and you went back and took a look at it. What, first of all, made you want to go do that, and why do that?
Wasn't my idea. My editor, David Pomerico at Harper, thought that it was something that was worth doing. My agent and I had actually brought him a novel that I wrote, semi-autobiographical novel, that I knew wasn't quite finished, that I knew needed some work, and I was hoping to find an editor who wanted to do the work together. And at the moment that we did that, that editor did not exist. And everybody passed on it. But David said, listen, I loved your book, Just A Geek, and I'm the same age as you, and I am different now than I was when I read it, and it lands on me differently now than it did then. And I wonder if you would look at it, and if you did, if you would have anything to say about it,
right,
and if you would look back on it and annotate it like that. And then, having done that, we would fill up the back half of the book with some notable essays and speeches that have recently been written that are not 20 years old,
right,
and then sort of annotate and look through those as well.
Yeah.
And the process ended up being this re-examination of who I was when I was almost 30 by me now, who's turning 50 in July, and looking back through the recontextualization of all of the work I have done to heal an incredible amount of childhood trauma that I was not consciously aware of and wasn't ready to deal with when I wrote the original Just A Geek.
Right.
The stuff that you refer to there that I talk about comes from this person I was, where I just didn't know who I was. I had never been allowed to find and define myself.
Right.
And I just, in an effort to kind of like lean into being what I thought people wanted me to be, it was just lazy humor. So I will give myself some compassion, knowing that like that is what you knew. You didn't know any better, but now you know. So what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And that led me to looking at these things and seeing parts of me that I was just appalled by. And an enormous unexpected benefit of that annotation and re-examination process was finding compassion and empathy for a younger version of myself, and the ability to reparent myself. So that I, as the person I am now, could give the love and compassion and support and validation to the child I used to be that, as a dad, I have worked so hard to give to both of my boys.
Of course. So double click on that. May 2021, you wrote, "I hope it would be cathartic, but instead, all I got was re-traumatization and
right,
sadness."
That was when I wrote the afterword, when
right.
I finished the book, yeah.
And then 6 months later, October, you wrote, "This has helped me tremendously." What happened in that 6 months?
I performed the audiobook.
And how did that change your perspective.
So there's a story in Just a Geek that is also in Still Just a Geek. It's online. It is an infamous or legendary story, depending on your point of view, about the time William Shatner was just really mean to me on the set of Star Trek V. And in that story, it's really about how I was a kid who was never supported at home. I was never defended. My parents never stood up for me. I was scapegoated all the time, everywhere. If someone came and was cruel to me, my mother's solution to that was that I should apologize to them. And in mental health, we call it fawning, and it's part of extremely dysfunctional relationships. And I see now the fawning and the fight or flight that is really just inherent to a trauma survivor existing very, very strongly in me until I could identify it and learn to recognize those responses and address them. There is a moment in that story where I go back to the Next Generation set after really just having my heart broken by this dude who I just had held in such incredible esteem for my entire life. And it was that terrible "don't meet your heroes" moment. It was really hurtful. And I went back to my set, and my costumer was one of, the adults in my home did not treat me well and did not take care of me. The adults on the set treated me like I was their child, and they loved me and they cared for me and they looked after me and they took interests in me, and they were the family that I didn't have. And my costumer was one of those people. And she was adjusting my costume, and she was like, "What's going on? What's wrong?"
Right.
And in the book, I say, I didn't want to say it out loud because saying it out loud would make it real.
Of course.
I said it out loud that he was a dick to me, and that made it real. And that set in motion this series of events of my entire cast having my back.
Yeah.
And ultimately Gene Roddenberry having my back, and ultimately William Shatner writing me a note and, and complimenting my talent and saying that he would like to see me on the set again. And it's this, it ends up being a wonderful, kind thing. And I thought about that as I was going through the narration for the audio version of Still Just a Geek. We did it over the course of about a week and a half. And when I started, I was impatient with myself. I was annoyed by myself. I was embarrassed.
Why?
I didn't like the things that I had said then. I didn't like, I just, all I could see were the flaws. All I could see were those places where I was trying too hard. Yeah. Where I wasn't just speaking simply for myself. I was trying to be something for all these other different people, chiefly among them my mom and my dad. And, as I was narrating it, I had to adopt a different posture and a different attitude when I read the original Just a Geek entries, right? So when I'm talking as myself in the chair, and this is what I do in every audiobook that I do, every character has a different posture in the chair. The neutral narrator is kind of like this, but there's somebody that's up there like this. There might be somebody who's over here if I'm doing characters.
Right.
If I've got two people in a scene and I need to keep their energy separate, there might be a person talking like this and there's a person doing, so they all have different.
You inhabit their persona.
And they come alive in me. When that kid, that 28-year-old came alive in me, I felt all of his pain, all of his insecurity, all of his fear that he was just failing at everything. And the recognition that he is responsible for raising two boys. Yeah. And that's a huge responsibility. And that is the most important thing in his life. And this thing that he's doing, this writing, is trying to find a way to support his family. I'll change pronouns now. My family. I was trying to find a way to support my family. And I was trying to find a way to use the skills that I had developed as an actor in a career I never really wanted. And knowing all of that about me now and being that guy again, I really felt like this is not a person who needs to be lectured and sat down and made to feel bad about this stuff. This is a person who needs to be loved and supported. This is a person who needs to be recognized for everything he's trying to do and gently corrected. Yeah. So that he can be a better person, so that he can become me. Mm-hmm. And it was in the process of speaking that stuff all out loud and in ways literal and existential, talking to myself and for myself and in conversation with myself. As part of my PTSD recovery, I do a thing where I create a separation in my head of the child I was who was being screamed at by his father, who was terrified of whatever was going to happen next, and the person I am now. And when I think of that, the person I am now gets between those two people and is like, I'm 50. That guy's like in his late 20s. And I don't know who the fuck he thinks he is, but he can't treat this kid this way. No. And I'm there to say to that kid, none of this is okay. And I'm here for you. Yeah. 28-year-old me needed that as well. And I wasn't able to give it to him until I had done everything that I did that allowed me to be in a place where I could start doing Still Just a Geek. And that included quitting drinking and reckoning with the reality of the people who are my parents and how they treated me and how the truth of my life is so vastly different from the story they told me and that they tell themselves. And those things made me, working on those things and figuring those things out made me, I think, a more emotionally available, supportive, nurturing, loving father. Made it by when I was able to give myself the compassion that I always deserved. I discovered that I was capable of doing that, and I was aware of times where I wasn't compassionate to my kids, where I was impatient, or I was just frustrated, or I was just out of spoons. Yeah, and being able to really see that change happened in the narration of it. So that's the huge thing that was different. I said it all and it made it real. There is a thing in Still Just a Geek where for the first time in my life, I speak out loud and I name and I describe the most traumatic, awful moment of my entire life. The moment where my parents just sold me. Yeah. And it took days to write and it was extremely hard to do. And it was extremely difficult to narrate. And when I got to the end of the narration, I said to the director who I've worked with for 10 years on multiple projects, who I trust implicitly, who really knows me, I said to her, do I need to do that again? I feel like it was maybe too emotional. And she said, I don't think it was too emotional. I think it was honest. And maybe you're just feeling those things for the first time and it's a lot for you. But I tell you objectively, it's not too much. And I said, okay, I trust you. You know, I would not trust a random director, but I absolutely trust Gabrielle. And that take is the take that's in the audiobook. And when it was over, just being able to say, like, you did this to me and it was wrong. Yeah. And that when I would try to talk about it with this thing that happened with my parents, my mom would always say, well, that was very hard on all of us. Completely minimizing and invalidating the fact that, yes, absolutely it was hard on all of us. It was especially hard on me, and P.S. I was 12. Yeah. Being able to say all of that stuff out loud, the catharsis, I found it. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't there in the writing. I do not understand the psychological process that happens that makes that occur, but that is absolutely what occurred for me. Wow.
You talk about Tapestries being your favorite Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Where Picard gets a knife and he, basically gets to go back after being attacked and relook at his life and what would have happened if he would have made different choices. Yeah. I'm someone who was bullied when I was young and had a lot of childhood trauma, but it has made me the person I am today, good or bad. Do you also feel that the things, and maybe you don't, that you've been through have allowed you to be the person you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My child abuse experience, my child exploitation experience is a fundamental part of who I am. I've overcome it, but I live with it. Yeah. And I am a lot more than that. Of course. And all of those things weave together to make the tapestry of my life, as Picard says in that particular episode. And I did try to just pull that part out. I tried to pluck the thread. Picard says in that episode, when I tugged at one thread, the entire thing came unraveled and it all fell apart. I did try to pluck at that thread. And what ended up happening is that I became a drunk for 10 years. And it wasn't helpful, and it didn't do anything to soothe the pain. It didn't help me grow in any way at all. It just unraveled everything. Yeah. And I'm really lucky in being very supported by my wife and my chosen family, that when I quit and began to do the real work that I was avoiding, it all kind of put itself back together. And, I think it's really okay. This is for me. I don't mean to speak for all survivors. No. For me, it was important and a significant component of the ongoing healing process to be able to say, I do not condone these things. I do not forgive these things. I accept that I can't do anything to change these things. And I'm going to love the child I was who went through all of that. But I can't take it out. And there's a thing that happens a lot. Well-meaning people say this all the time. And this happened earlier today online. A person, in an effort to tell me, like, you overcame this stuff, right? Sort of phrased it and framed it as, your parents did these things to you and look at who you are, right? Like, meaning like you should somehow be glad that happened to you, right? Whatever. And I said, I very much appreciate what I think you're trying to say, which is complimentary and supportive, but the way you said it is really hurtful and invalidating. And I just want to be really clear that I am who I am in spite of what happened to me. Right. I am who I am because I overcame these things, because I am better than the bully who was my father. And I am better than the attention-starved narcissist who was my mother. I would never use my children the way she used me. I would never humiliate and belittle and choke my kids the way he did to me. Like, I would never do any of those things. And I think it's real important when we talk about mental health and we talk about survival and we talk about trauma, it's real important that we center our survival experience, and that we all share the survival experience regardless of what our individual traumas were, how long they lasted. It's not a contest. Like, we're all members, we've all experienced trauma, and we need to center ourselves in our recovery. And whatever we have to do to keep ourselves centered and protected and healing is entirely okay. And for some people, that might be like finding a way to take all of the shit and throwing it all away, like really pulling it out and unraveling it all. That did not work for me. I would actually encourage everybody who is a trauma survivor, who is kind of like, one phone call away from getting out of it, to go make the call.
I love the line you use in the book, if I'm so smart, why is my brain so stupid?
I have to give credit to my friend Kristen Rutherford. Yeah. We wrote that speech together, and I said, I want to call it Stop Hitting Yourself. And she said, yeah, if I'm so smart, why is my brain so stupid? And I was like, dude, that is it.
That is it. Boot to the head.
Yeah. One more for Jenny and the Wimp.
No, absolutely. I suffer, OCD, ADHD, anxiety. My daughter is neurodiverse as well. My wife is neurotypical, and she gets frustrated, like not understanding when I walk into a room and I don't see something. It's not that I'm not trying to see it or be helpful. It's just the way that my brain works. And before we were chatting, and I think it's really important because I've had so many conversations with people about mental health, and I always use the analogy, if you need if you don't see well, they give you glasses.
Yeah, we say the same thing about diabetics and insulin. We say the same things about broken bones and casts.
Right. But yet if you can't make enough serotonin, that's not seen in the same way.
Yeah, I think that this is... So
stop that.
Well, I think the first thing that we do is we destigmatize mental illness, and that starts with breaking generational trauma, which an enormous component of that is refusing to be shamed. I don't know that every baby boomer is really shame motivated, but my parents were, and the baby boomers I was around were very much shame motivated. So my presumption is the generation that is ahead of me really is overly concerned with appearances and overly concerned with what will the neighbors think and overly concerned with how my child reflects on me. And it's me. It's all about them. And that shame and that refusal to acknowledge that mental health is even a thing, the conclusion that mental illness means personal weakness. Yeah. Like, I lived with all of that. That was all in my life. And what has to happen is enough of us who are getting up in age, who are beginning to have credibility with a younger generation, who are in positions in medicine, in science, and psychology to do things to actually make meaningful differences, we start talking about this and we change the conversation. And we say there is nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed. I have PTSD, I have anxiety, and I have depression. I'm not ashamed about any of that. Why would I be? It's stupid. Like I'm ashamed that I have allergies. Why?
Yeah.
Like I didn't ask for it. It's just a thing that exists in me. It doesn't make me weak. There are days where I'm so overwhelmed by everything that I know the best thing for me to do is stay home and not go with my friends and to cancel those plans or to reschedule something. And this Calvinist attitude that we have in America that your mental health and your well-being and your quality of life is secondary to absolutely everything else, we have to throw that idea out, and we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think organizations like NAMI and Project You Are Okay do an insanely good job, just a magnificently good job of doing outreach to kids. GLSEN does amazing work for LGBTQ kids in schools to reach out to kids who are struggling emotionally, who are struggling with mental health related experiences, and let them know you're not weak. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. Taking pills isn't like taking meds is not a bad idea. Like, I mean, it doesn't, yeah.
Zone you out.
And this is a huge misconception that really kept me suffering, aggressively suffering for like 15 years longer than I needed to, because I was terrified of my personality changing. I was just so afraid. My mother had drilled that fear so intensely into me. The only thing that changed is that I didn't feel awful anymore. That, and like, why anyone would want to withhold that from another human being is incomprehensible to me.
Yeah. How do we change this? The problem is mental health has always taken a backseat. When we look at insurance programs, I take a look at how much we've got to pay $6,000 before certain medications are covered that I need to just get through the day. My daughter does. And it's those people who are neurotypical that are at the top that are making a lot of these laws. How do we make that change happen?
I don't know. There's a much larger conversation to be had around how we just treat healthcare in America. Mm-hmm. I believe healthcare is a human right. I believe that healthcare is a fundamental service that should be offered to the citizens of every nation, that we should all just give a little bit, and everybody, when you're sick for whatever reason at all, you go in and it's all taken care of. We are the only country in the world that doesn't do that for people. We already treat mental health like it's sort of like lives in a shed in the backyard of physical health, and we kind of don't talk about it. We're not even addressing physical health and taking it seriously. We're getting closer and we're doing better. That system isn't going to change in any like short space of time at all. What we're doing, and I'm seeing it more and more and more, is we're going outside of like a top-down system, and we're creating small, local, grassroots support organizations. There's online support organizations. There are psychologists and therapists who are extremely active on social media, who are constantly sharing the things that they tell their patients to help heal them, and they do it in an incredibly supportive and nurturing way. As that gets more normalized, as more people talk about it, people will come to expect mental health care. Right. And we're starting to see it already now. It's hilarious watching these people who are in their 70s complain about how nobody wants to work. And the thing is, like, look, if you want people to work, you got to make it worth their while. Right. And I'm loving seeing right now that there are people who are talking to each other about predatory companies and how companies are exploiting workers and demanding, listen, I would love to come work for you, but you're not going to handle my mental health care, and you're not going to handle my prenatal care, and I want paternal leave. And these are things that I want. And if you're not going to give them to me, someone will, because guess what? Workers are really in demand right now.
Well, you've done an amazing job in being an advocate for that. It got me to do a whole lunch, a brown bag session on neurodiversity and how important it is within our own company. And this is also a good time for me to point out some of the great resources that were not there 5-10 years ago at Microsoft that are there now. We have our AKA.MS understanding, which is capital N, capital D around neurodiversity. We have our global diversity and inclusion, our neurodiversity and our accessibility, where we actually ask people to give product feedback and job postings for people who have a variety of disabilities from physical to mental, and how valuable they are within our workplace and within our company to help really give us a better view of all the people who use our products. So I encourage you to go check those out. And like I said, thank you so much for getting me to talk about this stuff in front of my coworkers and having people go, wow, and go, hey, on that list, I was a bunch of those things, and maybe I should go get checked. And that's the beginning. It's just having that open, honest conversation and coming out of that.
I think the more we talk about it and the more we unselfconsciously and simply talk about it, the same way that, like, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I went and watched a game, or, I cleaned out the garage or whatever. How you doing today? I'm having a rough mental health day. Like, oh, what's your particular flavor of Fun Brain Club? Like those things. Yeah. Those conversations are extremely useful. And also to people who are not neurodivergent, who don't know firsthand what we're talking about, you don't have to fix us.
Yeah.
That's like, it can be this huge responsibility. It can make people really uncomfortable. Like, what am I supposed to do? And honestly, as somebody who has this, unless I specifically say, this is my problem and I don't know how to solve it,
right, the
best thing, the greatest thing, the most helpful, kind, loving thing anyone watching this can do is simply listen. Listen and listen and listen. And if you don't know what to say, you can always fall back on, I'm sorry, that really sucks. That's all we need. And those conversations make it safe to live our lives authentically with all the different pieces of us, even the pieces that are sideways in our brains.
What's the hardest thing for you when somebody comes to you with one of their stories, the things they've been through, and they say, hey, you really helped me and you did that? How does that affect you internally?
It's complicated. On one hand, it feels wonderful to feel seen and to feel like I'm not alone and to feel like something I put into the world was helpful to a stranger.
Yeah.
That's great. The fact that I can be part of somebody's story. I'm finding out from people that I'm part of their story in wonderful, interesting ways. I meet a lot of gay men who loved Wesley Crusher and thought he was cute and had a big crush on him. And they chose partners who were kind of cute and nerdy. And I've met a lot of women who chose cute, nerdy boys because they loved Wesley. And just to be part of someone's story that way is really cool. And then I've heard from people who have told me that they have read my posts about living with depression, and they've read my posts about being a child abuse survivor, and they say things like, if I felt like I was always afraid to talk about it, and I saw you talk about it, and I thought that was courageous, and I thought I would talk about it too, and that feels really, really good. What I just said a minute ago about how we're not there to help, you're not there to like fix the problem or solve the problem. What I do in those moments is what I would want anyone to do for me. Listen and accept. If someone's telling me you did a thing that was meaningful to me, I'm going to accept it, not for me, for them. Mm-hmm. I can accept that and say, and genuinely feel grateful for that, and grateful for them sharing it with me without it turning into a thing where I'm like keeping a score sheet in my head about how fucking great I am, which is always like a challenge I've always had my whole life. I was always afraid of like believing that I was super awesome and like getting out over my skis. Right. So when someone shares something like that with me, it's so beautiful and so wonderful. And I really, I always accept it. And it is very much not for me. It is for the person, because when I have had the opportunity to tell someone how they made a difference in my life, it's just because I need to share it. Yeah. And I do my very best to receive it the way I would like it to be received if it came from me.
It's validation. Yeah. It's you were there at the right time, at the right moment, saying the right thing, and it helped me get through a tough moment, a tough time. It's a bit of responsibility.
Yeah, it is. And I take the responsibility seriously. I didn't ask for it, but it's something that I'm willing to carry. I'm willing to use the incredible amounts of privilege I have in the service of others at every opportunity. And you know, there's this defining characteristic of me in my entire childhood of just feeling unseen and unheard and minimized, and that like nobody ever had my back.
Yeah.
And somebody once said to me, "You have really big, nobody had my back, so I've got yours" energy, which filled my heart up because it made me feel like I'm doing something right. I'm showing up for people. And I guess that's the easy way to say it. When someone does that, I do my very best to show up for them, and I am grateful. And I stay in that gratitude for a minute, and then I get back to doing the work.
Yeah. Wow. In 2020, you decided you were going to stop auditioning for roles. You felt your body of work speaks for itself and all the stuff that you've done. How hard is it to get to a moment like that and to go, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I read that and I'm like, wow, that really takes a lot of confidence in yourself and F everybody. I'm happy with where I'm at.
I was like 47 when I finally said, I'm done with this.
Right.
Well, I was 7 when I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
It took me 40 years to be able to quit doing it. An enormous part of Just a Geek, which is reflected on and still Just a Geek, is this moment of prioritizing auditions over everything else, and learning that was not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And part of the annotation process of that was recognizing that when someone wants to be an artist, when someone wants to be a software engineer, when someone wants to be an athlete, they are willing to do things. They are willing to do a certain kind of work. They are willing to endure certain setbacks. They're willing to endure certain unpleasant things in pursuit of that particular thing. And I never wanted to be an actor. I hated auditions. I hated everything about auditions. I hated being in the car in rush hour traffic every day after school. I hated doing my homework in the car. I hated that I didn't get to play with my friends, that it was dark when I got home. I hated that I would go into these rooms and it was so clear that they had already cast somebody and they were just going through the motions and they weren't even interested in like, listen, this role is filled, but we're going to look at you and, just see what you can do for things in the future. There was an audition that I talk about in Still Just a Geek where the director read the newspaper the whole time, never even acknowledged that I was there. By 2020, I recognized and I accepted that I don't book auditions. And I hadn't booked auditions for years. The last time I booked an audition was probably Criminal Minds, which was in like 2012 or something like that, or 2013 or something. And when I went to that audition, I decided this is my last one. I don't care what happens. I'm never auditioning again. This is stupid. I hate this. I hate everything about it. And they never book me.
Yeah.
I've done this forever. If someone wants to know if I can do a thing, they can easily find it.
Yeah.
The reality is I don't audition well because I don't like being in that room.
Yeah.
I don't audition well because I cannot fully commit to a character because there's a level of resentment and pain that presents itself. When that works for the character, I have incredible auditions and I book Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
When I'm there for a different character, that can't happen. I have had one audition that I actually wanted to go on since then. And that was for a role that a friend of mine wrote for an absolutely delightful Disney movie. Just the sweetest, most wonderful kind of Harry Potter-esque kind of children's movie. And this was for their weird magic teacher, kind of a Hagrid sort of figure, who's just sort of like, I love you weird kids, like he was that kind of character. Yeah. And my friend said, like, would you read for this? And I said, I will 100% go in and I will show them that you were right when you said you should see my friend. I'm not going to book this job, but I'll go in. Right. I almost booked the job. I got really close to booking the job, but I just had fun in the process and I absolutely didn't care. And I went in on my terms. Yeah. I didn't go in because I was like, I have to do this or I'm a failure, which is what I had felt my entire life. So when I decided to quit auditioning, it was almost like my wife Anna and I talk about how someone comes up to you and all they want to do is be in a tug of war. Like the tug of war gives their life meaning. The only thing they know how to do is pull the rope, right? And if you drop the rope, that person has nothing to tug against. So many ways in my life, I've just been like, I'm dropping this rope.
Yeah.
I refuse. I'm not carrying this rope around anymore. And that was a big, big rope that I dropped.
Wow.
I will still do it. You know, I still work from time to time. When people ask me to do things, I go to the set and I have an amazing time. When I worked on SWAT, just earlier this year, I had a blast. It was great. I created a character and I had a really fun time doing it. I'm a capable, competent actor. I can interpret material. And if given, when I fit into a role, I can really bring that role to life. And I feel really good about that. That's a skill that I have, right? Some people are really good at like hitting a golf ball. And some people are really good at like knowing how old I was in 2020. And like everybody's really good at something. This is a thing that I'm really good at that I just happen to not like very much. And I think about Joey Ramone saying like, yeah, being in the Ramones is my job, and I don't like my coworkers, and lots of people don't like their coworkers, but I'm going to do my job because I'm good at it. I am not comparing myself to Joey Ramone. I want to be really clear about that, all right? He is in a class that I will never reach. But that level of just acceptance of like, this is what it is, was really healthy for me. Yeah. And I just decided, and I told my manager, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Please don't submit me anymore. Yeah. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in pursuing on-camera acting as a career at all. I love being an audiobook narrator and a voice actor and hosting Ready Room, and everything that means for my involvement in the Star Trek universe now is the best job I've ever had. And on top of all of that, I get to write books and tell stories. And I'm already working on the next book. And
anything you want to share?
No, I'm at a point where I can talk about how I'm doing it because it's really fun and I'm enjoying it. But it's too early in the process to say anything specific about it because I don't want to affect the direction that it goes in. It is a nonfiction book. Okay. And then there also is a fiction project that my brain woke me up in the middle of the night last week and demanded I get out of bed and write. And I have to tell you, that was very cool. That sense of like, wow, I'll remember this in the morning. No, I won't. I gotta really get out of bed. I have such a long day tomorrow. I have to get up so early in the morning. I had to get up and do satellite press for the book at 5:30 in the morning, 3 a.m. I'm in front of the computer for a half an hour breaking a story because I thought it was cool. And in the notes, I was like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if this is going to make sense.
But when you went back the next day and read it?
And I was like, dude, this is a great story. This is a really good story. And you're going to love writing this and it's going to be amazing. Awesome. So that's where my love language is, I guess. And then this thing that I get to do where I get to be kind of an elder in geek culture. Yeah. I love that. I love meeting people and being part of parents introducing their children to this culture that's such an enormous part of my life that brings me so much joy. And I love being used as an example of how you can be like everything I am without being a toxic dude. Yeah. And that's a cool thing to like bring to fandom and bring to cons and all that stuff.
Not many people in this industry can say that they have been a part of two cultural phenomena shows, which was Star Trek Next Generation and Big Bang Theory. Yeah. For which you got to be evil Will. You got to be yourself, yet not yourself, and do all these things that are outside of who you are in this character that people loved, didn't hate. They just loved because you represented them in a very different level. And not many people can say that. And that's pretty amazing that you've been part of cultural phenomenons twice and have affected different generations of people who will know you for different things. And that's really cool.
Thank you. I've been really lucky. I'm Star Trek and the Big Bang Theory are incredible. And I am so blessed and so lucky to be part of that. That stands on the shoulders of Stand By Me. And in between Star Trek and the Big Bang Theory, I had long runs on Leverage and Eureka. Yeah. It's like these things that sort of carried me through to those things. I'm really lucky that people have wanted to work with me and that I've been able to kind of sustain and keep afloat in between these really big things that are hugely consequential. And it's just a thing that I'm super grateful for. Not everybody gets to do it. I loved playing Wil Wheaton on The Big Bang Theory. Took 10 years for me to separate him from me entirely and feel comfortable and confident in being exactly who, he is on the page as compared to who I am in real life.
And they took your input for the show, and you had ideas. And that, I was reading that book, I'm like, that has got to be so gratifying when they go to you going, well, you know Wil Wheaton better than anybody does, and we'd love your input, rather than people writing who they think you are.
The best part of that entire experience, it's recounted once in Still Just a Geek, but it happened several times over the years. Yeah. Was feeling like I was talking with a fellow writer, that I was pitching a story to Bill or pitching a story to Steve.
Yeah.
That I was just having this conversation from a writer to another writer about finding the emotional beat that they're looking for. And I know as a writer what you're doing when you're looking for an emotional beat. And I know as the person who is Wil Wheaton where those emotional beats could be found. Yeah. And that collaboration was extremely satisfying and wonderful. And it felt terrific for me as that version of myself to say out loud the things that I have achieved that he has also achieved. And to say the truth about how frustrating the film industry can be and how inherently unfair it is and how you can do everything right and you still have to get lucky.
Yeah.
There's just that, it's that all of that was incredibly satisfying, and fun, an amazing cast of people. These two casts, the cast of Star Trek and the cast of Big Bang Theory, were giant families. The TNG cast and I are in a text chain every day, every couple of days. Right. I'm always sending them ridiculous memes and things like that. And when I need someone to be a mom and dad, I can reach out to Frakes and Gates McFadden, my space mom. And they show up for me. And that's really special.
Wow. I have a geek quiz for you.
All right.
Question number 1. What is the best Star Trek movie ever? And by the way, there are wrong answers.
Yeah, Galaxy Quest.
Absolutely. True or false, you are a guest artist on the song Dope, The Big Lie by Chunky A, Large and in Charge.
That is true. And I don't know how many of you watching this know that Chunky A was, of course, a character created by Arsenio Hall, who was incredibly kind to me in the day. Because I was on a Paramount show and his show was a Paramount show, they rotated me through his show for like 5 minutes at the end of an episode several times. And he always went out of his way to just be kind and gentle and welcoming to me. I was a weird, awkward, super nerdy, really insecure, anxious kid. He had Wayne Gretzky on the show and knew that I was a huge hockey fan and made sure that my first AD knew so I could go to the set and meet Wayne Gretzky.
Number 99.
The day that I met Wayne Gretzky is the day that we filmed the Hollow Pursuits of Next Generation, which is Barclay makes weird versions of all of us in the holodeck, and he makes Wesley Gainsborough's the Blue Boy as he sits there and foppishly eats blueberry pie. So I had done that all day before I met Wayne Gretzky.
That's a great story that I don't think anybody else on this planet could tell, which is kind of great.
If there's another person who met Wayne Gretzky while wearing an 16th century outfit and completely stained by blueberry pie, we should absolutely do a podcast.
What is the origin of Wesley Crusher's name?
Wesley is Gene Roddenberry's middle name. He's Gene Wesley Roddenberry. And they named the doctor Beverly Crusher, which means Wesley's name is Crusher, as sort of a pun, making a joke that the original doctor was called Bones. So they were calling the doctor Bones Crusher.
Right. Or Saw. Yes, exactly. Okay. What is the popular dining franchise that was started by the co-founder of Atari, Nolan Bushnell?
That was Chuck E. Cheese, where a kid can be a kid.
Wow. That's impressive. I didn't know that one. I had to look that one up. And I am a big Atari guy and all that, but I did not know.
Chuck E. Cheese, directly related, of course, to Showbiz Pizza Place.
I used to work. That was my first job when I was 16. I worked at Showbiz Pizza, and I got to be in the big Billy Bob Bear.
Amazing.
That costume smelled like
I'm sure
yak.
I'm sure it was the worst.
But I could go up and help people play video games, so I could play video games as Billy Bob Bear. But yeah, it's terrifying. You have to wear the top hat and the whole thing. Yeah, not fun.
The Chuck E. Cheese that I remember going to was in Canoga Park, and it was impossibly huge. I don't know how big it actually was, but to like little me,
The perception.
to little me, it may as well have been as big as Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it had all these different rooms. It had the big theater where where all the tables were, where you'd go eat bad pizza and they would sing to you on your birthday. And then there was a room that was decorated to look like a forest with like black lights and fake trees and stuff. And that's where all the video games were.
Yeah.
And then there was another room that had a guy that played the piano. And then there was another room that had a guy who sang with two lady singers next to him.
Yes. And the chimpanzee and the big gorilla on the drums.
Yeah. And I just remember feeling like this is magical. This is like, it's video games plus Disneyland, and like nothing will ever be as good as this. I got to go to the flagship Chuck E. Cheese in Northern California before it closed down, which apocryphally was known as Chuck E. Cheese University. I don't know if it's actually called Chuck E. Cheese University, which is where you learn that Chuck E. Cheese's actual name is Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Yeah.
Do you know his backstory?
I don't.
Let me tell you Charles Entertainment Cheese's horrific backstory. Charles Entertainment Cheese is an orphan. He does not know who his parents are. He does not know when his birthday is. Aww. All Charles Entertainment Cheese ever wanted to do was entertain children and celebrate their birthdays. So he got his friends together, including Pasquale, the pizza guy, and was like, let's make a place where kids can celebrate their birthdays. And I'll celebrate birthdays every single day of my life. And they were like, Charles Entertainment Cheese, you have got yourself a franchise. And that is the deeply horrifying backstory.
I was going to say, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
It's incredibly
in my
tragic.
life. Yeah.
He actually started out as a rat, clearly a rat, and then they made him a mouse.
Yeah. And really horrible pizza, which now I found in the grocer's freezer section.
Like you can buy
Chuck E. Cheese pizza in the grocer's freezer section. I'm like, why? You may as well just cook the box. It's going to taste the same.
Because there's a Gen Xer who looks an awful lot like me who is 100% going to the store to buy that as soon as we're done.
I am not kidding. I will show you the picture of it. I found it at my local grocery. All right, there's an asteroid named after you. What is its formal designation?
Oh, it's a whole bunch of numbers.
It is 391257 Wil Wheaton.
That's amazing.
Yes, now you know.
When that asteroid was named for me, which is such an unbelievable honor.
Of course.
I texted my friend Phil, who's an astronomer, and I said, would you just tell me where it is in the sky? And he said, you can't see it. And I said, I know, but I just want to look toward it.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, if you go out at whatever time and look toward, I think he said the Pleiades, you'll be looking at it. So I did. And I went out there and I was like, there's an asteroid out there. And the guy who discovered it named it after me. He could have named it after anyone or anything, and he chose me. And that is really, really cool. And what an unbelievable gift that is. And the only way it could be better at all is if that asteroid was going to collide with Earth. And unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, if it were to create, the next massive event, that would be, Wil Wheaton has killed us all.
Yeah.
But what a way to go.
It would be amazing.
Final question.
And it would happen years after I had already.
Oh, yeah, we'd be gone, so we wouldn't be there to enjoy it, unfortunately. All right, final question. Time travel, Will, in 1999 from today. You can go back to yourself right before you started your WilWheaton.net. What would you say to yourself? Let's say you have 30 seconds before the portal closes. What would you say to yourself?
You don't know what this means, but you're going to know what it means. And the day that you understand what I am going to say, you need to know this. You don't know it now, but I want you to know this. You are enough. You have always been enough. It's not you. It's them.
Well, I think you know a better way to end this interview, but congratulations on the book. We encourage everybody to go check it out. It is awesome. I have read it twice, and I got more out of it the second time than the first, and I read your original book, and I even brought my own copy of it that I paid for you to sign today.
Wow, I'm delighted that you did that. I would love to sign that.
You deserve it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
And thanks for being a friend and an open ear for so many people out there.
Thank you.